This is Debbie Reynolds of the Data Diva Talks podcast. I am super happy to have Patrick Kelley on the podcast today. So Patrick is the founder of Layer Gas Security and Critical Path Security. He has had over 25 years in the information technology industry with emphasis on information security and network security. He's been on panels with members of the FBI, CIA, NSA. He's also a cybersecurity expert for NBC News. He also has a lot of his research covered in publications like Fortune, Bleeping Computer, CNN, The Guardian, The Globe, Mail, and Krebs Security Online. Without further ado, I want to talk to Patrick.
Hi.
I was so excited to have you on the program. You and I had done the MIT folks called me up and asked me if I'd be on a panel with you. I'm like, absolutely. Can't wait to do it. So,
it was a great panel.
It was a good panel. It was about FIDO, and it's not something that you hear a lot of people talking about, I think. Not enough, at least. So what were your thoughts about it?
It was the one of the more rare talks and conversations that I've had. And in fact, I think that it might have only been the second time that I've ever been asked to come and speak about FIDO. I've often called to talk about how terrible passwords are. And we do a ton of incident response with organizations that are breached due to credential reuse and not using password managers and having insecure passwords, that sort of thing. But when Ned, reached out and asked, do you want to talk about FIDO? And I was thinking, wow, this is going to be a very interesting audience. If they're going to dial in to hear about that. So I enjoyed it because it was different. It wasn't just kind of the traditional, use password managers, use two-factor authentication. We kind of broke out of that cycle, and it was good.
I don't know about you, but there are just certain things that drive me crazy. It's like fingernails on the chalkboard. So what thing drives you bananas that businesses do that you think they need to know right now?
The thing that drives me crazy is they often don't have a plan. Building a plan on how you're going to respond to an incident or how you're going to, conduct yourself, in those harder times, you don't have to make a significant financial investment to just build a plan. And, there's a million things that when I started 20 years ago or so, however long it is now in this weird COVID time travel, I didn't expect that the problems I had then were going to still be the same problems that are in organizations today. But it's lacking a plan. And, and we will speak with organizations and, the common sort of statement as to why they don't do it and they don't take the effort is because they don't feel like they're important enough. They don't feel like it's going to happen to them. They've never heard of a company like theirs that have been breached before. And I always respond, to those questions is, the reason that you don't hear about companies like yours that have been breached is because they're gone. If you look at Target and you look at Home Depot and you look at Anthem, and these other companies, they have war chests, of money, and they have, proper fit cybersecurity insurance, and they can suffer the sort of the impact of reputational damage. And I mean, heck, Target ended up going on to becoming even more wealthy on the other side of the breach. But when you sit across a multi-generational company where the grandfather had started this and willed it into existence, and the father carried along, and then the third generation is there, and you're having to explain to the grandson that because of one email that was clicked, that 60, 70 years of effort is about to be unwound, and he's going to go work for somebody else. It is absolutely devastating. And it's just frustrating that we just don't take the time to write a plan. It's just know what you're going to do.
Yeah, exactly. I know, for years, in MBA programs or, business programs, they always talk about business continuity. And a lot of business continuity plans, unfortunately, didn't really roll in cyber. And they certainly weren't thinking about the pandemics, a lot of them. So, I mean, now business continuity is like a hot new word now. It's been around for a while. And then too, I think, the frustration that I have, and I know that you have it too, as being a cybersecurity person, is that people think cybersecurity should be reactive as opposed to proactive. So they're not as interested in investing proactively, even in just the effort of, like you said, planning. Because then when something happens, it's like, oh, well, now I'm going to call a cybersecurity person. They're going to save me. It's like, well, no, that's not exactly how it happens.
No, and you asked a good question about what frustrates me with businesses, but what really frustrates me, in our industry is that, we all want to go out, at least when we start, it seems that we all want to go out and we want to be the first group that built the new cool thing. And it's got to be machine learning with some AI and some blockchain and some blah 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 buzzword bingo. But you know what? We have all of the blinky light boxes that we need, and the amazing people that I've known in my career in information security, they didn't build anything. They were never software engineers. They were the people that I reported to that were capable of taking, complete and total geekiness and they could fit it into the business, and they could associate risk to it, and they knew how to. They understood their board of directors. They understood the culture of their company. They didn't build anything in Python. They were the people that had the ability to make any of that effort worthwhile. And in our industry, this sort of gatekeeping, where if you don't have these 12 certifications and you're not an OSCP and you don't write fluently in Python, I mean, that has got to go, because we don't need people as much as we think we do, that are elite hackers and just, what that 10 multiple engineers, or what are the terminology that went out for 10x engineers. We need people to communicate to the companies in the way that they understand, because I do believe that a lot of our breaches and our data is being leaked is being done because we are so impressed with ourselves and cybersecurity that we feel like the rest of the world in the C-suite has to come to us.
Right.
And surprise, like that's not the reality.
Well, and then you have to meet people where they are, right? So
agreed.
I had a conversation with some really brilliant cybersecurity women in Africa. Fantastic. And some of the things that they were saying, which is true. So when you think about the breaches that you hear about on, the news and certain companies, it's not, no one, it wasn't Tom Cruise hanging from the ceiling with a wire. It was like
No.
Someone's password was taped on their monitor and someone got in. Like, that's what happened. So thinking about not just, like you said, not just the blinky light box thing about cybersecurity, but just the regular protocols that you should be doing that don't cost you anything. Like, it costs you nothing to clean your desk at the end of the day. Or costs you nothing not to print sensitive documents and have your kid write their homework on it. Like, that could cost you nothing.
Absolutely. And, I was teaching a class in Argentina through the Mentor Project just 2 or 3 weeks ago. And, my advice to them was, go get a password manager and do 2-factor authentication. It's free. You can get a personal LastPass account for free. You can get a Duo personal account for free. This isn't anything that you have to go and wreck your household budget. And, those are the things where like we were working in incident response last week, and we're kind of to the reporting process of that right now. And we're working with FBI and Secret Service and getting some stuff moved around. But a lot of what we're finding that was involved in that breach was just credential reuse. So if you go get a password manager and you don't reuse passwords, it makes such a huge difference. And if you use two-factor authentication, but you bring up something interesting, because it was when we were discussing it with the kids in Argentina and with the businesses in Argentina. What we fail to recognize is that in the United States we have these massive information security budgets and we get it wrong. And in Africa and in Argentina and Venezuela and some of these other countries that I work with that don't have these massive budgets, they do just as an effective job as we do most of the time, because I've come to find that they're just more resourceful. They go and find, the thing that works, even if it's not, a new PO, that's got to be cut. They're just more resourceful. So I'm glad you brought that up. I really am. There's a lot of really easy ways for people to help themselves, and we just have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, instead of looking at the new high price tag Ferrari that you have, maybe you just need to pick up the broom and mop that you have in the cupboard and do just some housekeeping, perhaps.
See, that's why I say that you're brilliant. That is a phenomenal analogy on what it is. You don't want to give a 16-year-old a Ferrari. They're going to put it in the wall.
Exactly.
You can do just as good of a job with a Honda if you know how to use it.
Absolutely.
So, no, you're absolutely. So what we need to do is we need to send brooms to everybody. I think that's what we're saying.
Exactly. I would love your thoughts. I would like to always ask people the difference between cybersecurity and privacy. I feel like, especially in the news, you do a lot of stuff in the media. A lot of times they confuse those terms, or they don't understand that they're sort of different disciplines that have like a symbiotic relationship. I wanted your point of view about those two disciplines and how they work together.
I feel like, yes, they intertwine, but data privacy and violations of it is typically the output of poor cybersecurity hygiene, and that's typically that's quite often where that behavior and that relationship ends. My issue with privacy and with data that is being used against myself and everyone else is quite often I find that it's data that's retained about people that doesn't have any utility in the business. And there's kind of a hope, or there's a fear, that down the road a company is going to build some sort of program or a platform and they're going to need all this data. What's so frustrating to me, and I do it, and I tell on security awareness training, is that you don't have to protect what you don't have. And if you don't have the budget to secure everything, and no organization has the budget to secure everything, why are we collecting things about people and harvesting personal data on every person that we work with that doesn't have any utility? And it frustrates the hell out of me, because sure, cybersecurity, it can be a control, to help protect data privacy, but at the same time, if you're not collecting it, we don't have to try to find how to make that control work. So that's kind of how I feel about it. But recently, I had an event that I don't know that it changed my opinion, but it definitely gave me a moment of pause. There was in the past, I've largely been pretty averse to geofencing and harvesting that data. But I worked with a news station here in Atlanta. There was an individual that was accused of killing his parents, and he was arrested, and even his family members came out and said, yeah, he's a killer. And there was no way this person was ever getting out of jail. And it was a typical stereotype situation, and it was terrible. And, they ended up using geofencing to prove that he was never there. But at the same time, they were able to use geofencing to determine who was there at that point in time, and then they were able to correlate that with pawn shop receipts. He still spent 13, 14 months in jail. And, for the rest of his life, there's going to be that impact of his own family thinking that he was a killer. And it's not that I'm not grateful that geofencing and that privacy being collected was useful. And I was thrilled to learn that he was exonerated and the killer was brought in. But I am concerned about how that data is used without us knowing it. And, do organizations kind of take for granted what they have?
Absolutely. So I actually read that article because you were quoted in that article, and it was really interesting. I have a problem with geofencing too, and that is related to indiscriminate data collection. So the situation that you talked about is exactly the way geofencing should be used. It's like there's a crime that's been committed, they're trying to get more information, it's very targeted to that date and time and that place. It's not just getting everyone's, having a police car record everyone's license plate.
Yeah.
Just rolling down the street or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think also the other point that you have brought up, which I always like to talk to people, which is data retention. Like we have data retention problems all over the world. Like people keep way too much data, and then especially legacy data. So when I'm talking to people, when I'm talking to companies about what their process and procedures are and how they do X, Y, and Z, after they give me their whole spiel, I say, so where is that room? What are you talking about? The room where all that stuff is in some old server is plugged in somewhere that no one wants to talk about.
2003 server.
Right, that nobody wants to talk about. Like, where is that? Yeah. So it's sort of like that legacy data, people keep it because they think it has some value. But what they don't realize is that may be some of their biggest risks, because that is probably the easiest way for a hacker to get into their system. And then because it's the data so old, they don't know what's there. They're going to spend a lot of money trying to figure it out.
You're absolutely right. And what compounds the problem is shadow IT and cloud. That and sheer arrogance. But we'll start at the beginning and then we'll move to arrogance. In line exactly what you're saying, we have individuals that go in organizations and they're in development, they're in the dev team or DevOps team. And they don't want to wait to go through the procurement process and to get a PO issued for a new server. So they just go and spin one up in AWS, or they spin up a Linode or something in Google Cloud, and they don't tell anybody they're doing it because they're going to use a free tier node. So they go and get old data because they're arrogant enough to believe that they know everything about where they're going to put this data. And they're arrogant to the point of not understanding that just because data has a date on it, that doesn't actually reduce, its value. Exactly what you said. You say, okay, this is great. I love I love the show horse thing that you're doing for me, where you're bringing out all your policies and you're bringing out all your methods and your guidelines and your standards. But and I appreciate the show with the show horse, but I'm a plow horse, right. And I'm not here for the show. I'm here to work the plow. And when I look to see that you shoved my information into an AWS instance that the company doesn't know anything about because it's free, how should I feel about your company that one of your engineers had the ability to just go and take my data whenever it was created and use it for a profit? Right. And just the discounting that my DNA, my biometrics, my any allergies that I have. Thank you, Starwood Marriott. And my birth date, that you just shoved that out there. There's a good chance about a time from here to the point that I died, I'm still going to have that allergy.
Right.
And I don't really need the world to know it just so that you can get some rewards points.
Exactly. Or that insurer decides they don't want to insure you because somewhere down the line they got that information that you didn't even know that it got passed over to someone else.
It already happened to me.
Yeah.
In actuality, I went for life insurance just about 4 or 5 months ago. And we still haven't resolved it. But we had 3 carriers that just fast denied me. I don't mind calling them out because they discounted me, but Prudential, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then MetLife, all 3 of them, went and found something that had nothing to do that I didn't even know about. But while we're picking on people, why do I have to fill out my name, address, my allergies to get a sandwich from Publix?
Absolutely.
And I reached out to them on Twitter, and I'm like, why are you accepting the risk of holding this data to sell me cold cuts? Like, it's a $5 sandwich. Like, why are we...
Well, you know what? This is actually, I'm glad you brought this up so I can tell you exactly why this happens. And there's a legalistic reason. Okay. So there was a company, I can't remember. It was, Preda or something.
Okay.
They had, they sell sandwiches. So they had something that they're supposed to put on the sandwiches. If it has peanuts or something in it. Anyway, some person bought a sandwich and they had peanuts in it and it wasn't labeled and they died. And so now sandwich shops, they either try to like super duper label stuff, or like Publix, they're taking maybe a strange tack by trying to find out whether you have an allergy. So that if something happens, they say, Patrick said you didn't have an allergy or whatever. So, yeah.
God, but that's such a chicken and egg, sort of argument, right? It was like, okay, if I have a peanut allergy, I feel like I should be responsible for telling the stranger that's going to make a sandwich, hey, don't put it over there about a Peter Pan peanut butter. I'm a kind of a Jif guy. Like I got a problem with that.
Exactly.
And I don't really need to know that the coffee's hot because I just ordered hot coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
I get it, but where does it stop?
Oh, exactly. And then what happens to that? They said I heard a statistic that said like credit card companies make more money on the data they sell about people than fees. So
yes.
A lot of people, they don't want to stop this, this gravy train that's happening. One thing that you mentioned I would love to talk about a bit more about is shadow IT. So I've heard a lot of different things. I actually was part of a group where they were trying to say that lawyers that were saying maybe we should embrace shadow IT, and I'm not comfortable with that. I guess I have a lot of feelings about it. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were, and I can tell you what I think.
Yeah. I'm actually really interested in what you think. But I'll lean in. My thing is that I would love to know an argument where the company believes that taking data or having assets that are assigned to them legally and not having a record of it is somehow of value, or it has some sort of a benefit, because it doesn't matter how hard I try, I can't get there. Like if I came to work and I found out that data had been taken and thrown into a server that I knew nothing about, but I was legally responsible for because it was built on behalf of critical path security from one of my teammates, and that I had customer data on it. Yeah, that's a hard no. So, I'm good all day with embracing cloud, right? I started, way back in the day, I used to manage Exchange mail servers and Lotus Notes and GroupWise, and this is way, way, way on back. And, back in a time where the music I listened to is still cool. So that kind of gives you a perspective there. And, and so I remember that it was kind of complicated then. And like Exchange servers now are so complicated, you need a team. And business intelligence platforms are so complicated, you need a team. So I get cloud, right? Some things that we want are so complex that, staffing an organization to maintain it and care and feed for it is difficult. But I can't get there. I can't get there with shadow IT. Like willful ignorance that you have something living out there just doesn't, like that just doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm totally not a fan of shadow IT at all, because to me, when you dig down and you drill down deeply enough, it's typically a person just doesn't want to follow the path of whatever it is that the company has decided. So, I've had people. I had a woman once tell me we were decommissioning this really old legacy system for one that actually worked and did stuff, and she was very familiar with that. And she didn't want to go to this new system. We had did a lot of one-on-one stuff, and she literally said, like, you have to like pry this from my cold dead fingers before you get it out of my hair. And I'm like,
Challenge
well,
accepted.
yeah. I was like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, duly noted. We may have to do that. So a lot of it, when you drill down to it, is people really not wanting to embrace the path that the company has, and it really is a huge risk. So I think I wouldn't allow people to do it, even though I see, especially in smaller companies, where it's like, oh, the CIO wants to do something different than everyone else, or someone in the C-suite, or everyone else has these other rules, like for example about passwords. Everyone has to have passwords to change every few months, and they have to be a certain complexity. But these C-suite guys, they have different things. I'm like, and to me, that is a direct correlation. Those are the people who end up getting your company breached because they're doing something different than everyone else. It's like almost like the you see the penguins huddled together, all together. It's the ones on the outside that they're like the target. So those are the people that have trouble, right?
They're the ones that feed.
Yeah, exactly.
You're absolutely right, and you bring up an interesting point. And one of them's a little bit of a trigger, and in the back, or it could be a little bit of a trigger for some. And for the last 30 seconds, I'm like, man, should you say it? Should you keep your mouth shut? But I'm going to say it because I'm never really good about keeping my mouth shut unless there's a foot stuck in it. But validating doing the wrong thing because it had the right outcome that's not valid. And I think we have a lot of the societal and culture problems that we're having right now, across the entire world, but heavily in the United States, because we're doing things that we know, groups of us are doing things that we know are wrong. And then we're validating it because it just happened to turn out right. And because something turned out right doesn't mean that it is right. But you mentioned a C-suite, and you're absolutely correct. And it's not just there either. Like we had an issue. We were called in to do an audit of GDPR for a firm in New York. And I remember sitting down with them, and they're very angry that GDPR existed, and they're actually lashing out a bit on me about GDPR existing. And I'm sitting there going, wow. Well, okay, well, you're the attorney, so I'll tell you what, stop creating it. Right. But GDPR exists because we couldn't act right. Like there wouldn't be privacy rules if we didn't abuse people's privacy. But, we ended up not taking the job because the attorneys were very forthcoming that they were not going to adhere to it, that they were going to have the staff do it, that they're going to have everyone else do it. But by God, they were partners, and they billed out at $7.50 an hour, and they weren't going to have anything getting in their way. So, you're right. There's kind of this sort of mentality that, none of this applies to me. And even when the breach occurs, they still don't believe that it applies to them.
Yeah. It has to be a culture. It has to be a culture top down of security. and it has to be the top guys following it, just like everyone else at the bottom. Chances are, if your company gets breached, it's not the low level employee that got breached. It's probably a high level person that's not doing what they're supposed to do, or someone has their credentials, and like maybe one other target is like the secretary of a C-suite person. So a lot of times they have their secretary logging in as them, doing different things. Some people, like when we're reading in the newspaper where they say, this company, they lost this money because someone sent someone a request to change the routing number at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're thinking out from the outside looking in, well, that person should think it's unusual. I said, but this actually happens in companies. So the problem is the culture of a company. That needs to not be acceptable, or it needs to be a situation where a person feels like they have the ability without repercussions to be able to go up to someone and say, did you really send this? Is this okay to do?
Well, you're absolutely right in that. And I find that, when we're doing security audits, so by the way, if there's any potential customers ever out there that end up hiring us, I'm going to give you a little bit of a cheat sheet. When we do phishing attacks, we target that. Like, we look at the culture, we look at Glassdoor. Is this a company that works their staff at crazy hours, and their staff feels like they have to overachieve or they're fired? And we will send phishing emails to the support staff at 3 or 4 in the morning because we know that they're going to come in first. And they are so eager to please because they're in a culture where, being honest and telling the truth is almost a detriment. And so they're going to do whatever they need to do to look like that they're competent and they're doing the right thing. And we always go back to the company and say, why did your employee feel like, for them to be recognized and to do well here, why did they feel like they had to work at 3:30 in the morning and send out an email without doing any approval? What led to that? Because that's to me, that is a huge cultural, red flag.
I like the fact that you say you do that, because you can't turn a blind eye to culture. Like, culture, that explains a lot of what happens within organizations, and then leaders have to be accountable for that. I don't know how you feel about this with insurance. So with cyber insurance, people feel like, I don't need cybersecurity because I have cyber insurance, so whatever happens, they're going to pay for it. It's like, if you're not patching your servers or doing just the basic things, you probably aren't going to get paid out for that.
Well, I can tell you right now that that's the case. I think I'm on my 8th or 9th phone call today, and 4 of those phone calls have been with insurance companies, and with insurance companies and the insured. And on 2 of those calls, the claims are currently being reviewed as to if they will actually pay those or not, because there were machines that weren't patched, there were credential reuse, there was it's kind of a lacking of proper compensating controls. They hadn't had a pen test in years. There's, and then we were finding 2,000 servers and 2003 servers that are sitting, on the network with old database platforms.
Yeah, and those back rooms.
Those back rooms. If I put it over here in the corner.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Nobody will see it.
Precisely. What is it, if you had to, because I think both of us work on the intersection of privacy and cybersecurity. I'm more on privacy, you're more on cybersecurity. But if you had one wish, if the world, according to Patrick, about privacy laws and things like that should happen, what would be your desire?
Stronger repercussions.
Yeah.
Just straight out of gate. Stronger repercussions. I mean, when Anthem, when Equifax got breached, the payout to a user, if a user got paid out at all, was $36.
Right.
And a year of free credit monitoring. I mean, why is that going to prevent any company from doing anything? You look at other companies that have been breached, and they ended up spinning the media in a way that, they got a huge breach, and they minimized it, but then they maximized how often they reached out to talk about the amazing things that they were doing and how they were such a better company and they're going to come through it. And they turned it into this, they turned incompetence into a hero story. And then the stock goes through the roof
Yeah.
and they make more money. Like
Yeah.
there's no repercussion. And we're the ones that get, that get attacked.
Absolutely. It has to be more consumers need, not consumers, humans, right? So I think because not every human is a consumer, we need to think of it as a human problem. And Equifax in particular is like extremely dangerous because, like you said, if you have a peanut allergy now, you're going to have it 10 years from now. So some of the information they captured will be in use for many, many, many years, not just the 1 year of credit monitoring or whatever. Like, Lord knows what is going to happen with that data down the line.
And I don't think, and again, I just don't think that they care. For instance, part of the Equifax breach was somebody leaving default credentials, in place on a border server that had individuals' data on it. And that, to me, like, you can tell me that you worry about my privacy and you care about, how you're acting, but, the word's cheap. I mean, the
Right.
actions on the other hand show that you don't really care about any of us.
Yeah.
But I've come to tell people that we have to be very, very picky now about who you're willing to create an account with. You have to be very careful about what information that you provide them, and you have to make a choice as to if it's worth it, because there has been implied trust and implied confidence that Facebook and the rest of these other companies cared about us and the things that they said that they're really going to do them. But there's election fraud and there's data breaches we have to deal with.
I think there's going to be a huge consolidation. So it's going to switch from the company power to the individual power, and people are going to find companies they trust, and they're going to share more data with them, and they're not going to share with like thousands of other people. So
when does that happen?
Well, you know what? I think it's going to happen, first of all, because of iOS 14. So basically, they took a really bold step to say, let the consumers decide and let the consumers consent to stuff and let them know what they're doing. But part of that play is to say, trust us, trust Apple, give us more of their stuff. It's not a coincidence now that they're rolling out bundled services. So I think the future is bundled services with trusted companies, and these other people, if you can't get people to trust, it's going to be hard for them to be able to compete in the marketplace with these bigger companies if they trust them.
I mean, I think my only argument to it is there's a point in time that we trusted the companies that now we don't trust anymore.
It's true. And very true. Very
true. We seem to, and this isn't the only kind of industry or category that it fits in. It just seems that we trade friends and adversaries, like baseball cards.
Yeah.
And the companies that, the companies that say that we should trust them now,
right?
How's it going to be, a little bit down the road when we can't?
Absolutely. That's so true. I hadn't thought about that. Well, I would love for you to tell people how they should be able to contact you.
I'm pretty easy to find. Patrick Kelley on LinkedIn. Reach me on Twitter at pkelly2600. I'm an old hacker, 2600 head from the 90s, so pay homage. And you can find us any of those ways, or you can Google critical path security. But Debbie always, you always know how to find me.
Absolutely.
So if you can't find me, just go to Debbie.
That's right. Exactly. Call me up and I'll find them.
She's the diva. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. This is a fantastic show, and I really hope people reach out to you. You're just so whip smart. I think the reason why I really, really like you is you're very plain spoken like me, and we, I don't know, maybe we get in hot water for that, but I like it. It's fun.
The minute we talked the first time on a planning meeting to the MIT, I was very impressed. You really understand the problem set, and you approach it in a way that, even though it's a tough subject, you approach it with a calm and a comfort. you're brilliantly intelligent, and any interaction that I've had with you, whether it be this or MIT or even a message on LinkedIn, I always feel better after it. So even if I'm smiling, I'm having a good day, and today's been a good day, like, when we get to the end of my conversations with you, you just make me feel better. And if you're going to deal with, difficult stuff like this and this subject matter, it's a quality that I really appreciate. So, the honor is mine to be on your show today. You're absolutely the diva, and I feel incredibly honored. Whenever I can help you out or do anything for you, just let me know.
Oh, same here. Thank you. That was so sweet. Oh my God. I'm gonna have to record that and just put it as a ringtone or something.
Play it back to yourself. Sometimes you gotta have a little bit of that outside,
Exactly.
Someone cares for me today.
Exactly. That's amazing. Well, so glad to have you on the program, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
We will. Take care, my friend.
Okay. Bye-bye.